So today we have Tom and Patsy Inglet here to talk to us about early birding. So guys, the floor is yours.
Okay, very good. Well, we're very happy to be here. We are today, in case you don't know, is World Vulture Appreciation Day and National Hummingbird Day. So we're celebrating birds and celebrating our holiday here, Labor Day. And it's a great time to start birding if you're interested in bird watching, because the fall migration is already underway. It's not that cool here, but it's getting cold up north, and the birds are heading back down to wherever they go for our winter season up north.
See ruby throats on our feeder.
Yes, we've had ruby-throated hummingbirds. They're coming through on their migration, and you'll see all kinds of interesting birds this time of year. Now, our intent with this talk today is to give you some, if you're interested in bird watching or birding, as we call it sometimes, some tools, tips, and techniques to help you build your birding skills, no matter where you're starting today. Maybe you're a beginner, maybe you've already done some birding, maybe you're a pretty good birder already. But we hope that we can add something to your skill set that would be of value to you and to encourage you to continue this wonderful pastime that we love so much. Now, we're representing Bexar Audubon Society, which is an organization that promotes birds, bird conservation, and supports birders like yourself and us. Now, everybody here probably has their own reason for coming to the seminar today. So why birds? Why go bird watching or be a birder? Well, it's a good question. And I'm sure that the answers go across a spectrum of reasons. The birds themselves are attractive. They're beautiful. They sing. They symbolize freedom. Lots of things we don't know about them that is still there to discover. They're visible and accessible. They're out when most of us are during the day. Some of us like to make lists and collect things. All of that is possible. If we're a solitary person, we can bird by ourselves. If we like the social or even the competitive element, we can do that with birding. It really depends on you and what you're looking for. But the three things that are here in red, birding is good for our total health. Physically, we're out in the environment, we're outside, and we're getting our exercise. We are exercising our brains to try to figure out what it is I'm looking at, and it's connecting us to nature, something bigger than ourselves. So it's really good for us. And of course, we found out that when we were locked down, a lot of people were looking out at their birds and they were getting interested in, well, what bird is that? Why is it doing that? And so forth. So this is a good time to learn that. Birding also expands our perception and enjoyment of nature. In just a minute, you'll see an example of that. But after you start looking at little bitty birds, you start to see all kinds of things in nature and start to connect the dots, because everything in nature connects, as we know. And important to us, especially, is birding contributes to conservation, because birds are very important members of every ecosystem. And we don't even want to think about losing our birds that make this part of the country, for example, Texas and the hill country, very, very appealing to travelers and so forth. So the adventure you start or you continue today can last a lifetime. Some people start when they're really, really young. We didn't start until we retired in our 50s. So there's no good or bad time to start just today. But we do warn you that birding can become addictive. You might find yourself scheduling field trips with Audubon Society or looking at places to go other than Texas to see the birds that are there. And that's okay. We don't apologize for getting you involved in this kind of magnificent obsession. Now, three things we'll cover today, and it'll all be pretty quick, but there are some handouts and some resources that we furnished to Phil Hardberger Conservancy, and those will be posted on the website with the recording. So you'll have those after the presentation is over. So number one, prepare before you go, and that's why you're here, to help prepare yourself for being more successful in birding in the field. We want to offer you a systematic ID method that will up your chances of being right when you try to identify a bird to name it and find out therefore more about it. We'll give you that and some tools that will help you do that. And of course, practice, practice, practice. No substitute for getting out and looking at the birds themselves. We can't do that with you today, but we're sure that there's so many places here in the area that you can do that. Now, prepare before you go. I was a teacher for many years, and I know that whatever we learn new, we have to start with something that we can relate it to, something we already know. Well, the good news in that is everybody knows a bird, at least one. For example, here's a bird that's very common around our area. And some people, we see them all the time, and some people even know their name. They're called the northern cardinal. Cardinal because of the color, and northern because they're the member of their bird family that gets into North America. But how much do we really know about these birds? If I turn that picture off and ask yourself, what color is that bird's eye? What's the main body color? Are there any other colors on the bird? What's the general shape and color of the beak? Are there any other features on that bird that draw our attention? What's the proportion between the body length and the tail? You could go on and on and on. And a lot of people have seen this bird for so many years, but they can't answer those questions, or at least all of them. And this is what birders will focus on, is opening our perception to what's common around us. And that leads us to things that are new. So now we can see that it is a red bird. Of course, we know that. It's got black around the face. The eye is black, and in that mask has a triangular beak for cracking seeds, bright orange, and a crazy hairdo crest. Can't see the tail, but it's about equal body length and tail. You can kind of see the corner of it down here. So this is what's opening our perception. Now, the basis of scientific identification or reasoning is compare and contrast. So here we have two birds. Compare means to find what's common, how they're alike, and contrast means how they're different. Well, these birds, if you compare them, they're about the same shape and size and proportion. They have the same beak. They have generally a lot of the same characteristics. They have the crest, they have a mask. But what's the main difference? Is their basic body color. And it turns out that they have a lot more similarities than they do differences. And in fact, this is the male and female of the northern cardinal. So we know the male, and now we have the female here. So that's how we compare these birds that we find. Now here's another bird that's common in San Antonio, and you see it in Hardberger Park, is the blue jay. It's in the family called the jays, and this is blue. That makes sense. And totally a different looking bird in some ways. If I compare that to the cardinal, both of them have a crest. The blue jays is a little smaller, but the body color, the patterning, and especially the beak is different between those two birds. And scientists they say, well, there's more differences than similarities here. We're going to put these birds in two different bird groups called bird families. And so this is how we kind of deal with the diversity of birds. In your pack, here is a picture list of 16 common birds in San Antonio in the urban setting. And if you most of us have seen most of these birds. If you take some time to study them, to look them up in a book, to look them up on the internet, to listen to their calls and songs, then you have a good basic reference set for any new birds you might find in your yard, which during migration, sometimes you do. And maybe there's some birds that come to your yard that are on this list. You can make your own list, but the idea is to have a reference set. And this is the one we offer. It offers some different bird families. Now, for example, if we had this bird come to our yard, if we live in Western Bexar County, where it's a little drier, or Southern Bexar County, we might see this one. And if we look at our reference set, the closest bird on our reference set to the bird we don't know is our northern cardinal. They have a lot of features alike. They both have a crest, they both have red, they have big beaks, but not necessarily the same color or shape. So what we do first is we go look up the one we do know. We look it up in a book. Here's the Kaufman Field Guide to North American Birds. And here is our cardinal, the male with his crest up and down, the female with her crest up and down, because birds can move every feather on their body when they want. And here's even a junior cardinal. First-year birds kind of look like females, but they have a gray beak. And if we look on that same page, we find the bird we don't know. It's in the same bird family. And a good field guide is organized that way. So here we have a bird with a crazy name, Pyrrholoxia, but it's a cardinal's cousin. So that was an easy one. Not all of them are that easy. Now, also a good thing to do is to study what you might see. If, let's say, you're going to Hardberger Park, you can go online and get a bird list for Hardberger Park. We'll give you a place where you can do that. I don't know if it's on the website or not for Hardberger, but you can definitely get it from a website called eBird, which we'll mention in a little bit. And if you study what you might see, and that for the time of year you're going, then you can prepare your mind for what you might be seeing that maybe is new to you. Now, you also need some essential birding tools and know how to use them. So Tom's going to take us into that, and then we'll go on with the IDs.
Yep. So good morning. When a person gets interested in birding, usually one of the very first things that they're going to do is they're going to purchase some sort of a bird guide, usually a book. And here's a picture of 4 different bird guides. They're all very good. And the bird guides, the good ones, have some things in common. One thing is they are organized around groups of birds, similar birds, families of birds. And they also have the pictures over on one side with little marks, maybe telling you where you ought to be looking at certain things. They'll have some written verbiage that covers some elements about the bird. And then they'll have a map that gives an idea of where that bird is found. This is the Kaufman Guide, which is the one that we suggest as your first, emphasis on first, because most of us find ourselves having a bunch of them before it's over with. But Kaufman's Guide uses digitally enhanced photographs. So that's what he has. Here is a picture of the National Geographic of their similar page. They have the cardinal, have fewer views. These are actually paintings. And the thing like Geo with the painting, they actually give you a little something around the bird that gives you a hint maybe of some of its, where it's located, what kind of plants it uses in its habitat. It also has the verbiage and the map, as we said. So once you have this and you're wanting to see these little details that they're pointing out in the books, one of the things that you may need, excuse me, are binoculars, and we're going to cover those in just a second. But before that, I wanted to mention, because this is a pretty big phenomena in the last few years, we've had a lot of apps also for birds, for bird ID and what have you. And we've shown 3 here. This top one is the Audubon app. It's free. Just go on to the store and get it. iBird Pro is excellent. It's one of the older ones, and it continues to improve. It's excellent. It costs something, maybe 10, 15 bucks. I'm not sure. Sibley also has some cost, but it's also excellent. Sibley guides are really, really good guides. And all of these, just like you see here, he's pointing out all these deals. And like I mentioned earlier, what we need to do that to find those often would be we need to get close to the bird. Well, there's 2 ways to get close. We can move up, which means the bird flies off usually, or we can get something that amplifies or magnifies the view of the bird, called binoculars. Binoculars, whoa, let me see, what did I do there? I jumped way forward. Okay, or backward. So binoculars come in all sizes. They come in a couple of different basic shapes, this offset kind. You also have these kind that are straight through like this. You got colors, you got all these different things. But whatever binocular you're looking at, they have some consistencies. Here again, we've got the straight through version and we've got the offset version. So what goes on inside is pretty complex. There's a lot of lenses and prisms and what have you. And all of this stuff is what really adds to the cost or reduces the cost of binoculars. But one of the things that is common on binoculars is they'll have two numbers on, like 7 by 35, 8 by 42, 10 by 50. What these numbers are, the first number, the smaller number typically, is the magnification, meaning it gives the appearance of being 7 times closer or 8 times closer. And then the second number, this number 35, 42, 50, that's the diameter of this objective lens in millimeters. So that's telling you how big is the light gathering in of the binocular. So the bigger that is, the more light you get, or the bigger, brighter picture you get. But when you divide that smaller number into the larger, you would like that quotient to be approximately 5. And the reason that is this where this light comes out to our eyeball, that's called the exit pupil of the light. It'll be a diameter. And when you divide this number into this number, it defines the diameter of that exit pupil in millimeters. And so you want it to be 5. 5 is about the size of our pupil. And so we're getting all the light our eye can use, and we're not getting a bunch we can't use, and it's the right answer, 5, okay? Then also, once we've got our books, apps, and binoculars, what else do we need to do? Well, we need this systematic method of identifying birds. It's like, I see a bird, what is it? Well, how do you start? What do you do? Well, what we've come up with, and we did this with our Young Birders Club, actually, we said, well, being a birding is like, identifying a bird is like being a detective. How many clues do you want? Well, you want all you can get. And so this play chess backwards, this is our cutesy way of saying pay attention to a lot of different elements, a lot of different clues. And we say play chess backwards because C is color, and we're very color biased humans. So we tend to want to say, oh, I saw a yellow bird. Well, that doesn't tell you squat, because if there's more than one yellow bird, I mean, you don't know anything. So we say play chess backwards. What does this stand for? The letters stand for sound, silhouette, ecoregion, habitat, color patterns, and then the word play is involved with their behaviors, because some birds, the behaviors are very important. So the first one is sound. Often, before we ever see a bird, we can actually hear the bird. So,
Hope you're hearing it.
Even if I don't know what that bird sound is, it tells me where to look. And so I hear the sound, I look up, and with that sound, I'm rewarded with a painted bunting, if I can see it well. I mean, who wouldn't want to see that? Okay, so also sound. Many birds, there are not many birds. Some birds very similar in appearance. These two are on our back porch, both species. This is 2 different species of wren, Carolina wren and Buick's wren. And they look in poor light. You might have trouble determining which one you're seeing. And the sounds are totally different though. Here's the Carolina wren. I bet all of you have heard this. And here's the Buick's wren. These are not easily confused. So even if you can't for sure see if they call, you get another big clue, right? Okay, the next thing on our list is silhouette. This is something that is overlooked by a lot of people, and it is really, really valuable. It helps you get birds into their families, what have you. And it tells you, I mean, all of these birds, do you think these are all the same bird? They're all blackbirds, right? No, they're not blackbirds. We made them black to be silhouettes. But you can look at this and tell that these are all different species, and you don't see any detail. You just know by the shape. I mean, look at, you've got different beaks, you've got different tails, the way they hold them, what they're shaped like. Are they long? Are they short? Are they pitchforks? Are they little nubby things? Do they have little triangle beaks, or do they have long pecking beaks? Do they have no brain pan? Do they have a golf ball for a head? Do they have a crest? You know, there's a jillion things you can see here, and it's just the silhouette. So the key is pay attention to the silhouette. It's really important. It can really help you in a lot of ways. Some of the ways are like judging size. Well, judging size is pretty tricky. You really need a standard. And what we do is say, we choose some birds you know, like a house sparrow, a robin, and a crow. And then is the bird you're seeing about the size of the sparrow or about the size of the robin? Or is it in between the size of the sparrow and the robin? Is it about the size of a crow? You know, so these are the things you do, but you need a standard because you look up at something in the bright sky and it makes it look very much bigger than it would be otherwise. So it plays with our brain. Also, here's a picture of just some silhouettes of some raptors, different families of raptors. I'm not trying to teach you how to identify raptors up in the sky. I'm just trying to illustrate that look how different they are. And with study, you can identify these birds, the families of the birds, or even the species. I mean, falcons have these pointy wings, long tails. Look at this osprey, it looks like his wings in the shape of an M. You know, you got all kinds of differences here. But the important thing is to recognize there are differences. It takes study to do that justice. You also see posture in silhouette. This plover, he's got these long, skinny legs, and he's got this plumpy body up here with a beak that's shorter in his head. You got a woodpecker who's always parallel to the limb, just about always. You've got swallows on wires. You've got hummingbirds. This is a very giant hummingbird compared to the size of this duck. You can tell this is a duck by its silhouette. The posture on this pigeon is very different. Short legs, big plump body, little head, but pretty vertical, right? So this guy's horizontal, this is vertical. Lots you can tell by posture. And then we got the major groups of the birds, which helps us go to the right place in the book to define them.
Okay, I love this graphic. It shows the largest bird on the planet today, which is the African ostrich, and the smallest bird, which is the bee hummingbird of Cuba. But they're all birds. They all have feathers. They have some basic similarities. But there's 10,000, almost 11,000 species of birds now defined. And if we had to study them all one by one, it would be really hard. But they group together into families of very similar birds. And that shows their relationship, like all parrots are kind of similar to one another. Hummingbirds, they're parrot-like and hummingbird-like and so forth. And that's the way a good book is, a good guide is organized, not by color or anything else. Now this is Mr. Kaufman, and he gives you a picture guide in the beginning of the book, all the waterfowl, and here's all the birds of prey, and here's the chicken-like birds, and he tells you what page to go to. So if you can kind of figure out what group these are in, you can go right to that and start looking at more details. It's very helpful. And most of us recognize a duck profile or a bird of prey like a hawk or an eagle that's out during the day, an owl, the big wading birds, the long legs, the long neck, and the dagger beaks, hummingbirds, recognizable, the woodpeckers, as Tom mentioned. And then when we get to the little songbirds, that's the second half of the book, that's 60% of the birds on the planet. And so it takes a little more study sometime. But here again, he's grouped the flycatchers and some of the other birds that are very similar, like sparrows and so forth. And in your package of handouts, there's some silhouettes of the main groups of songbirds so that you can kind of see. You can look at them quickly and see that they have very different postures and proportions. So we have our flycatchers like the vermilion and the phoebe and the scissortail. We've got thrushes like the robin and the bluebird, thrashers like our friend and state bird, the mockingbird, and this is a thrasher that's his cousin. We have the jay family, blue-green jays. We've got crows and ravens, big blackbirds with huge beaks, as you can see. Our feeder fanatics, the little chickadees and titmice, are actually very closely related. We have the wrens, as we saw before, the vireos, which have a big beak for scraping things off leaves, and the little warblers with the tweezer beaks for getting things in the ball moss or the bark of a tree. And we have blackbirds like our friend the grackles that live at HEB. Not all of them are black because the orioles are in this group, and some of the other birds have yellow or red on them. The sparrows, which are small birds that are usually brown and streaky in some way, and they have a beak that eats seeds. So here's some of our native sparrows here. And if it looks like a sparrow, but it has red or yellow, it's some kind of a little finch. And then we have our cardinal family, which is the grosbeaks, the buntings, and the tanagers. And they have, grosbeak means big beak, and most of them have a big beak, and it's a little bit more of a varied group. So a little bit of time spent studying these from your book and your app. Before long, you'll be able to look at a silhouette and look at shape, size, proportion, and posture, and be able to know at least what family. I mean, we know that this is in the owl family, right? Some people might know that this is a duck and this is a kingfisher. Here we have a little wren and so forth. And here's a dove on the wire, which is often where you see them. So before long, you'll be keying right into this, and that will get you to the part of the book that you need to look at.
That's in the kit with the answers on the back.
Yes, this picture here is in the handout kit, but we have the answers on the bottom for you to help you study. And it's amazing how fast this will come to your consciousness. It's a little bit of study. Now, after we look at the silhouette, we also want to look at the ecoregion. Well, what does that mean? That was the E we had to find to go with chess. But what it really means is the map. When is a bird there and where is it at a certain time of year? Texas, huh? Okay. And Tom is going to take us through this as we go through and look at what that means to us as birders.
Yeah, so the ecoregions, I mean, this map shows that Texas having 10 ecoregions. And what happens, what does that mean? Well, it means these have different soil types, they have different plant communities, maybe different weather. So that attracts or becomes the home for different species of birds. So that's what we mean by regions. And these occur, like if you had a bird that said it occurred in all of Texas, well, you might want to get a little more specific than that. And so the ecoregion, though, is like Patsy says, is really the map that is in the book. And these maps are color-coded in the different books. And there's a legend in the front because they vary. I don't know why they can't standardize them, but they don't. And in Kaufman's books, winter is blue, summer is red, and purple. Mix them together, you get all year long. So what this says is the cardinal, northern cardinal, distribution is the eastern United States all year long. Don't bother going to Oregon if you want to see a cardinal, okay? So then here's a couple of other maps to illustrate. If we live in Central Texas, like right in here where this is, and we wanted to see a golden-fronted woodpecker, well, we're in good shape because on this map, green is all year long. And so we can see those birds here at our place all year long. And if you're living in New York and you want to see a golden-fronted woodpecker, you need to come to Texas, right? To see it. Don't go to California, go to Texas. Also, northern flicker, another type of in the woodpecker family. In the summer, he's all the way up into Canada. Most of the year, he's all through the US, but in our area, Texas, he only shows up in the winter. So don't bother looking for northern flickers in the summer, like this time of year in our area, because they're just not there. So that's what those maps tell us. They're really important. It narrows down the area, but that's not enough. I mean, this area of Texas, is that all alike? No. So what do? Well, the next thing we go to is the habitat, the actual specific type of place that the bird likes to live. And the habitat is typically illustrated or talked about in the verbiage in the bird guides. And so we're going to look at a couple of habitats here. These are two habitats at Mitchell Lake. They're both water, but this is Bird Pond, which is a small, relative, shallow pond. And like at least grebe, this is where they live and breed, back in here in these bushes. You don't go to Mitchell Lake, which is like 500-600 acres deep water, to look for a least grebe. You might see one, but this is not their habitat. Their main habitat is what these ponds. But here you would find pelicans. You don't go here planning to find pelicans. You may find one, but not likely. These guys like big water, lots of it. Here's a couple of more illustrations. The roadrunner, obviously a good name because he's here on a road. This guy likes this scrubby stuff like we have out west and south of town. Cactus,
Sandy.
yeah, and mesquite, what have you, sandy soils. But they like that dry stuff. Then we've got this typical hill country, this oak juniper forest look. This is where we find things like the golden cheek warbler. As a matter of fact, all golden cheek warblers are hatched in the hill country in central Texas. They're so specific to this habitat. That's what they have to breed. Okay, you have to have the old junipers and oak trees. And then here's a couple of pictures from Cibolo Nature Center. We've got a tall grass prairie. This grass gets up to 6-7 foot tall. This is the kind of place you would find like this little sparrow, because they've got this little triangle beak eating these little tiny grass seeds. So they're in here. But back in the back here, this is where Cibolo Creek runs, which looks like this. It's these big cypress, ball cypress trees and this flowing water. This is where you go to see a green kingfisher. You're not gonna find this kingfisher out in the middle of this field, and you're not gonna find this sparrow down here around this water, okay? So those are the habitats. And the next things are the color patterns, not just what color is it, where is it?
So I kind of think about this as using your artistic skills. If you look at a bird, you kind of paint a picture of the bird in your mind, and then you go to your app or your book to try to find a bird like that in the family that you've identified. Because saying it's a red bird, this is a red bird, but so is this. So where is it red, where isn't it red is very important. And as Tom mentioned before, in the book, a lot of books point out the field marks that are important to diagnose or identify the bird. Here, look at the beak. Look at the beak. This beak is orange, this beak is yellow, and this mask is red, this mask is black, and so forth. So they help you by pointing out things that you should be noticing. And you try to get as much about the bird as you can. What we say is look at the bird as long as it'll let you, from many angles you can see it, and then go to your book or your app, because books and apps don't fly, but birds do. And try to take in as much. That's another part of opening your perception, being able to have that picture of the bird. And you'll learn things like wing bars and different names for patterns by reading about these different shapes and patterns of the birds themselves. And you learn the parts of a bird when you need them. In the write-up, if it says the supercilium, well, that's the eyebrow, the area above the eye. Sometimes they call it the eyebrow. But you learn the different parts of the bird as you need them. And all the good field guides will have some kind of a graphic like this to help you learn them. And to learn them in flight, because sometimes birds will show field marks flying that they don't show while they're sitting, and vice versa. So a lot of times you want to see them in flight and perched or doing whatever they're doing. So with all of that information, we want to go to the last thing is the behaviors. And sometimes this is so important because some birds have very characteristic behaviors. And that kind of brings us back to song, because song is a behavior. And that's one of the behaviors we pay attention to, kind of makes the circle. But there's other things. Birds have different flight patterns. Pigeons fly in a straight line, and some birds like this raven go up in a spiral and they ride the thermals of the air. Some of them make an undulating flight, looks like they're riding the roller coaster. And so all of this is important to notice about the bird. Some, when they're feeding, some birds walk, some birds hop, some birds run along the surface and pick things up, and some probe. All of these things could be a good clue, and we learn to notice as much as we can. This bird, Eastern Phoebe and the Black Phoebe, are flycatchers. And both of them, when they fly out, they get a bug, they come back to the perch, they wag their tail. And the one in our area that's most common is the Eastern Phoebe. And from a distance, they perch on the outside of the bush or tree so they can watch for bugs. And they go out and they come back, wag that tail. You can almost guarantee that that's an Eastern Phoebe. So it's another clue. And we learn these a little bit as we go along, as we start to really study the birds as we go. So with all of these taken as a unit and try to get as much as we can, we put them all together and we come up with, I think I know what that bird is, okay? And sometimes we're wrong, sometimes we're right, but we learn from all of that.
No birds are harmed.
No birds are harmed by simply being misidentified. So Mr. Ken Kaufman says the 4-step ID path is see a bird, you use a silhouette to find out, what general group does it belong to. You go to that section of your field guide or your app and find pictures that match the field marks you were able to observe. You check the range map and the text to be sure, about habitat distribution. Be sure you're not looking at something that shouldn't be here. Now, occasionally birds do get lost or they get into places they're not common, but we want to play the odds of what is most likely. And if it is rare, we want to get a picture of it or something to document it. And we read the text for the behavior. In our apps, we can even listen to the voice of the birds and see if the voice that we're hearing in the wild is the voice we're hearing on the app. And that's another clue. So you have to go out birding and practice, practice, practice. The more you do it, the easier it gets. And you start to see things you never saw before. Both of these birds are ducks and they have green heads, but you see they're different. They're different species. And you start to key in on the eye color and where the different colors are and all that kind of thing. We know the city pigeon here on the left, and all of a sudden we see this great bird, this gray bird with the white stripe and blue eyeshadow and a red eye. We didn't notice that before, but now we do. And now we know what the white-winged dove looks like. Here we have 2 white wading birds, but one's bigger than the other. One has a yellow dagger beak, the other one has black. One of them has black legs and feet, the other one has black legs and yellow feet. 2 different species. We're noticing things we never noticed before. And here are the 2 woodpeckers that are common in our area, the golden fronted, which is the front of a bird is the front of its head. So it has that little drop of gold on the front of its head. This is a male, has a red beanie on his head. And then we have the little ladderback, which if you look at it, it's a smaller bird, but it's a messy looking bird. The other one is clean on the breast and the face. This one has marks. So again, you're learning a little bit at a time, and it's like a big funnel. You start with all the birds and you get it, and it's a process of elimination as well as identification. So we can't take you out in the field birding, but when you do go out in the field with a bird leader, just kind of follow their lead and follow them and listen to what other bird watchers are saying to one another about the bird. And you find yourself learning little bits every time you go out. And go out by yourself sometime. Try to puzzle through it on your own, and then go out with people who know more than you do and people who know less than you do, because sometimes their questions will teach you. We learn something every time we go out with a group. So it's important to be considerate of that group and to also put yourself a challenge as a single. Now, some things to kind of wrap up the session here on being a birder. We invite you to record your bird sightings and to share them with other birders. And there's a very easy way to do that. It's an app. It's called eBird. We mentioned it before. There's an app for your phone, whatever kind of phone you have, and you have an account on your computer. And it keeps a list of all the birds you've seen, where you saw them, when you saw them. And you can also look at their pictures, listen to their songs, and learn more about them. And it gives you a bigger appreciation for them. There's all kinds of YouTube videos how to do this. And there's a website for eBird. It gives you a tutorial, and this is all free from Cornell Lab of Ornithology. They get the data, and you get to keep your list of all the birds you've seen. And you can mine that list. Here on eBird, you can go in and find out where are all the great places to go birding in Bexar County. You explore Bexar County, and it will tell you all the different places there are to go, and that is a big number. You'll never run out of good places to go birding in this part of Texas for sure. So again, there's a YouTube video that discusses this. And the important thing about this, we mentioned conservation, is this data that we're giving to the scientists goes to Cornell Lab up in New York, and they're studying these bird population patterns and their movements for conservation reasons. So we become community scientists with our boots on the ground and our eyes to the birds, and we're giving them the data to help them with their conservation. There's a little tutorial, free tutorial online called eBird Essentials, and it'll get you started with using eBird, and it's really easy to do. Then there are other apps that will help you with bird ID. And there's the Audubon app helps, and there's something iNaturalist, you may be familiar with that, and the junior version called Seek. But the one I want to highlight right now is the one in the middle. It's called Merlin. It's named after Merlin the magician. And this app, also from Cornell Lab and also free, seems like it's magic sometime. You download this app and you download the what they call the pack for all of the United States, all the birds, or just for Texas, which doesn't limit you much because Texas has a lot of birds. It's a big birdie state. So in the palm of your hand, you have 3 ways of making an ID. It says start bird ID. It asks you 3 simple questions, 3 questions that we've taught you about today. What are the 3 main colors of the bird? What's the general shape and size of the bird? What's the 3 main colors, and what was it doing? There's that behavior. Merlin knows where you are and when you are with GPS. So that part is taken care of. You can also take a photo and identify it through Merlin. You can also record a sound, and they will help you tell you what bird that was. So this has revolutionized birding, and we really recommend that you get this app.
And you can use it to explore birds.
Yes, and you can also, the last thing is explore birds. It will give you like a little field guide in your hand of all the birds that are in the area that you've chosen for the pack. So practice in your own backyard, in local parks. Hardburger Park is a great place to practice. Build your skills a little bit at a time. Download Merlin, practice with it. Share your data with eBird, and you might want to join a bird-friendly group like Bexar Audubon chapter of National Audubon. We have regular outings, and you can go with people who are beginners like you, if you are a beginner, or people who are more experienced, and they can teach you a little bit at a time. And of course, Cornell Lab is kind of our mothership, you might say, at that and National Audubon. If you have questions, here's our email, tpinglet@satx.rr.com, or you can reach us through Bexar Audubon, the website. It has a contact email that we can be contacted. So we'd like you to join our flock and enjoy birding. It's a wonderful thing to do, and it keeps you interested, outdoor, healthy, and engaged with nature. And at these times, it's really helpful. Many people have said it's really made a difference in their lives. So if you're interested in Bexar Audubon, we have a website, a very nice website. We have regular programs about different groups of birds, all kinds of things you can explore. And get out there and go birding. Now, to finish up the last few minutes of this talk, Tom is going to show you, and as I mentioned, we'll have a handout on binoculars and all that, and it has a portion on there about how to set your binoculars for yourself, for your face and your hands, and that's called Binocular Boot Camp. And how you do that really makes a world of difference in what you're able to see and what you're able to perceive. So I'm going to stop the share of this. I can do that. And we're going to let Tom come on, big as life and twice as natural. And he's going to show you really quickly how to set your binoculars. And then we'll have a little bit of time for some questions. Okay?
Yep. So this is something that takes only a few minutes, and it makes a world of difference. We know people who have been using binoculars for quite some time who've learned something even. It's just basic, but it's really important, and it doesn't show up everywhere. So one of the first things we say with binoculars, let me do this down a little bit where you can see lower. Okay. So one of the first things we do is we put them around our neck. And that's not just to keep from dropping them, but it's to make them available to our hands without having to look down. If we're finding a bird, we don't want to have to look down or wonder where our binoculars are to find them. One of the first things we want to do with binoculars, pretty basic and important, is to take the lens caps off. You need to do that to be able to see through. Then, do you wear glasses or do you not wear glasses? What happens is if I put these up to my face and I wear glasses, my glasses hold the lens off of my eyeball the appropriate distance to make a sharp image. If I don't wear glasses, then what I do is I twist this cup up. In other words, see, this one is up with glasses, without glasses. So you twist both of those up if you were wearing or not wearing glasses, okay? Then also, binoculars do this. And you see how that changes the distance between the two barrels. What you want to do is you want to adjust them so that they fit the same distance between your eyes. So you flare them out, you put them up to your face, and you start folding them together until you get one sharp circle. One circle, because that means both barrels, both eyes are looking at the same thing, okay? Next thing, how do you focus the binoculars? Well, this big knob, usually they have some central knob, and this focuses both lenses at once, okay? So whenever you're using that one, it's focusing both lenses. But also binoculars on the right barrel at the base of the eye cup, there's a really stiff, hard to turn, typically, ring. And what that does is that allows you to adjust the focus of this barrel independently of this barrel. So that allows you to compensate for any difference in your eyes or any difference in the manufacture of the two barrels so that you can get it where it's really just right. And we'll go through how to do that in just a moment. Also, how do you hold binoculars? Well, one of our young birders had the best description. He said, like a big hamburger. You want to trap all the tomatoes, the onions, and everything. You want to hold them in your hands. And that gives you good control of the focus. Also, your elbows are down. You don't fly because this gets really tiring really quickly. So you hold them like this and that way. How do I find something with binoculars? This is a really big idea, and it's so basic and simple. The way you find something with your binoculars is you find it with your naked eye. And then once you find it, you set your eye on it like a laser, and then you pick up your binoculars and make them line up with where you are already looking. If the bird isn't in your view, and then you focus to sharpen it. And if it's not in your view, just drop them down a little bit and find that movement again, put them right back on, okay? So that's the basics. Now, the next thing is I want to show you how to adjust these things to your eye, the focus to your eye. So what we do here is that we want to cover the lens that you can adjust independently, the right lens. You can either do it with a lens cap or with your hand, either one. And what you do is you keep both eyes open, you find something 15, 20 feet away, and with that lens covered, you focus with the central focus. You focus on that until you can get it just as sharp as you can. And once you've got that just as sharp as you can, don't mess with this knob again. Now uncover the right lens, cover the left lens, and now grab the little ring at the bottom, look at the same thing that you were looking at. Oftentimes a sign or something is good because it has good sharp edges. You look at that and you move that ring until you get it just as sharp as you possibly can. Once you've done that, you don't need to mess with this ring anymore. From then on, the lenses are adjusted. You just use the central focus. And if you put it up and it's not in focus, go one way. If that doesn't do it, go the other way, because that's the way it is. And I'll tell you, if you're trying to use binoculars and something seems black, in other words, like, oh, I'm having trouble, it's usually that this needs to be redone, the changing the distance between the barrels. So I think it's that simple. You uncover them, you wear glasses or you don't, you fix the focus, you find it with your eyes, laser, find it, get on it, look at it, go back to the book and look for the field marks. That's it.
Okay.
So,
well, I know that blew by. Let me switch over with you.
that's also, that thing on the focus is also in the handouts, I believe.
Yes, it is. It's step by step, but we wanted to show you so you would know what we were talking about. Now, we have a couple of questions I see, and if anyone would, I would just go through the chat here.
Who's that butterfly?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lovely little butterfly image here over on the left-hand side. Okay, it's a question is an 8x42 a good standard to start with? And then, of course, the price range. 8x42 is a very, very good combination. If you divide 42 by 8, you get about 5. So that gives you a good exit pupil. And as far as price is concerned, you do get what you pay for. All that stuff in the inside of the binoculars, the better quality glass and coatings and so forth, the more expensive it is. But what we do is we tell people to challenge your budget as far as you can do it. You will never regret getting really good binoculars.
I've never heard anyone say, I wish I'd have bought cheaper binoculars.
Well, they probably wish they had not had to pay so much, but you can get a good serviceable set of binoculars these days for about $250 to $300. And then if you every little jump you take will give you a sharper image and better viewing. But you have to balance the cost versus the quality.
I will say that the studies I've seen of late, the sweet spot, and let me say this about binoculars too. Binoculars nowadays, the inexpensive ones, the quality of the image is so much superior to what they used to be. All of them are much better, much higher than they used to be. So the sweet spot, according to the magazine articles that I have read of late, meaning the optimum for what you get for the money is nominally $450, $500. So, I mean, and that's steep for some people, but I will just say this, binoculars don't buy anything less than about $100, $150 because you're not going to be happy. They're not going to be serviceable. But binoculars serviceable ones come from anywhere from about $150 to about $3,000. So there's a big range, okay?
Okay, he'll talk about binoculars all day. Just email him, or we can give you our phone number and you can discuss any questions you have. A good place to go is Wild Birds Unlimited over on Military and Huebner, because they do carry binoculars. You can actually try them and see how they fit in your hands. Now we have a couple other questions I want to address. It says, I see the books are sometimes by region. What region are we in San Antonio? Well, the reason we recommend the Kaufman book is it gives you all of North America in a small book that you can take into the field. The apps also give you all the birds. If you buy a regional book, then if you go out of that region, you have to buy another book. So at least to start with, one that covers all of North America would be what we would recommend. But we are in San Antonio has Eastern birds and Western birds. So it's really hard to pick one or the other.
But if you're buying a book, we're in the Eastern zone, not the Western. The Western starts further west of here. But the books overlap. I mean, the edges there, they'll be okay. But we are the Eastern.
Okay, question, where do we get the handouts? And the handouts is available on the Kilharbarger Park website. And I think somebody put in the chat the link to it.
Yeah,
Can we put out
for everyone?
Okay, that's in the chat. So if you'd like to check that out. And can we put out our bird feeders now? I heard about a fungus or something we have to be careful about. Well, yes, you can, but please do keep your feeders clean. And when you fill them back up, give them a look, make sure they're clean. If you see any birds that seem to have eye problems or whatever that are coming to your feeders, then you would take them down, clean them with thoroughly, and then put them back up. But the situation you're talking about was mainly over in the eastern United States, and it has not reached us yet, so you can feel pretty safe. But always keep your feeders clean as you can, and the water too.
We keep feeders out all year long.
Yes, we do. Okay, it says, what resource do you recommend for learning bird calls by ear, either in general or specific to our area? Well, there's a class on Cornell that they teach birding by ear. We teach a class usually once a year about birding by ear. And then if you just sit in your backyard and listen to the birds
Watch them sing.
And watch them sing, and then listen to them on your app, before long you'll be picking out your local bird calls, and then you can add to them a few at a time.
Another app that we didn't mention is called
BirdNet.
BirdNet. That one you actually you record, and then you upload it, and it comes back with suggestions. And what happens is this iterative process is, I don't know any substitute for the iterative process. Put it that way.
It takes a while, but it's really worth it, because a lot of our bird surveys that we do personally, most are by ear, because birds sometimes don't want us to see them, and we use their calls, especially in the spring when they're calling for their territories and their mates. And it says, I want to start a birding group at O.P. Schnabel Park. I live in front of that park. What birds are prominent at this park? Well, here's a good way. Go on to eBird and go explore Bexar County. And then it will give you a list of hotspots in Bexar County, and O.P. Schnabel Park is there. And you can see a printable bird list right there. If you have trouble finding it, but just click around on ebird.org and you'll find that. And every park that's mentioned has a bird list. Okay. What should we use to clean feeders? A dilute solution of Clorox bleach, 1 to 7, 1 part to 7 parts of water, and then rinse it thoroughly and let it air dry is an excellent. That's what the San Antonio Zoo uses and other organizations. It's a really good one. Will you have a hike through the park anytime for beginners? Well, I don't know about through the park. I'd have to look at our schedule for that. But I know that once a month at Mitchell Lake Audubon Center, they have a beginner bird walk. So if you will go on to the Mitchell Lake Audubon Center website, and there are guided bird walks, and there's one specifically for beginning birders once a month.
And I think Hardburger has some routine walks as well.
Yes, I don't have those on the tip of my tongue. So if you go on there, check with the website on the park. Okay, well, I know you guys, this is a busy weekend. There's lots to do, and we're on our way to the zoo to help celebrate International Vulture Day and Hummingbird Day. So we are going to stop the talk at this point, but you can reach us through the Bexar Audubon website. You can reach us through our email, and we are happy to talk with you and help you to become a birder, or to work through any questions that you might still have. So thank you so much for being here. And we're just thrilled that so many people got up on Saturday morning to come and hear about birds. They are wonderful and they're worth it. So we'll sign off for now and say best in birds, and look to see you on the birding trail. Maybe we'll get to have a bird walk with you one of these days. So long, and thanks to Phil Hardberger for inviting us to do this talk. It's always a pleasure to work with them. Great. Thank you.
Yes, of course. And thank you everyone for joining us for this talk. If you're interested in learning more about Hardberger Park and the conservancy that supports it, please visit philhardbergerpark.org. The Conservancy is a member-based nonprofit that relies on donations to support educational activities in the park. So if you're able to give $5 or $10 to support programs like today's, we would really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.
Okay, thanks so much. See you around. Bye-bye.